are here at NAMM 2019 with an absolute legend of the synthesizer industry, Mr. Dave Smith, the one and only. Hi, Dave. It's really good to see you.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing just great.
Good.
What have you got to show this year?
Well, this year we're showing the Prophet X and the Prophet XL. It's actually the same instrument. The only difference between the two is the size of the keyboard.
Yeah.
Basically what we're doing is trying to make sample playback interesting and turn it into a musical instrument as opposed to the workstations that have been around for the last 30 years.
The Rompler thing that has really seen better days.
Yeah, it's more about personality in the samples. We've got great samples with APO, and it's all about just taking you in different directions. We have like 10 times more samples than everybody else.
Wow.
And they're just all over the place. And it's just so much fun to just randomly go through and interact with them. And it's also got analog filters, which is a huge part of the sound.
Very important.
People have been asking for samples with analog filters, asking me for this for like 30 years.
Forever.
And I finally broke down and did it. So it was a good time to do it. So the combination of quick, easy editing and loading and going back and forth, you're not working with a screen waiting for things to load, and the knobs are exactly where you would expect them to be. So if you want to turn the cutoff knob, there it is.
That's
You're
beautiful.
not going through a big screen trying to find a parameter.
All the menu diving stuff.
Yeah, no menu. It's just all so easy to use, and it's just a pleasure to play. And of course, it sounds great because of all of that.
Well, it sounds great because it's a product that you make, and therefore, of course, it does.
Yeah, well, it's. I tell people it's cheating. You know, when you put analog filters in a product,
Sure.
and then especially when you start with the great samples that we have, so you have the stereo samples playing through stereo analog filters. It's just magic. It just sounds awesome.
Is the filter topology similar to the filters that you used on the Prophet 5?
It's in the ballpark. Actually, the same designer, Dave Rossum, did both.
The legendary Dave Rossum of EMU fame.
Yes.
He designed the filters for this unit as well?
Exactly. I mean, it's
wow.
Basically. So they're from Sound Semiconductor. It's a great. It, for whatever reason, just happens to be a perfect match for the samples. It's just something magical about it.
Well, I think that's beautiful. I remember back, in the 80s, I spent a lot of time trying to get the Yamaha DX7 to sound good, and the whole time I was thinking, man, if they only had an analog filter stage on the end of this, it would sound so much cooler than it does.
Yeah, like I said, it's cheating because it just works.
It just makes everything sound
and
good.
And it's easy. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about sort of the real-time performance aspect of the sampling. What is it that you can do with the Prophet X that's different than just having a run-of-the-mill generic sampler in terms of live performance?
Oh, there's all kinds of stuff. The filters, of course. We have an extensive modulation matrix that's incredibly easy to use. You press a button to pick your source, press a button to select your destination, and you decide how much you want of the modulation. And you could, take a sample and modulate an oscillator with it, or vice versa at
Beautiful.
Audio rates.
At A rate.
Yeah.
That's
so
great.
you could just. There's so many. I can't even start to describe all the different things you could do live. And you can see we have sliders in addition to wheels.
Oh yes, very nice performance.
And these can be assigned to anything you want, or multiple things. Per program, so it's very easy to go in and set up each program to be exactly what you want for live performance.
Wow, that's wonderful. Dave, I remember several years ago when you started up Dave Smith Electronics with Evolver. Was that the first one?
Evolver, yes.
I remember, and it was wonderful that you were starting up again and doing all of this. But this is like a masterwork. This is sort of a pinnacle of your career kind of piece. It's pretty amazing.
If you think about it, it's like when I started Dave Smith Instruments was 2002, so here we are 17 years later. So there's been a little bit of evolution during that time.
Well, sure.
And as you know, we try to keep all of our instruments unique and different with their own personalities. So, Prophet 6 is different than an OB6, which is different than a Prophet X, which is different than a Rev 2. So they all stand on their own. They all have different strong points. We have a lot of people who buy them all because they're, it's no different than buying 5 guitars.
No, it's true. I was having a conversation with somebody recently. I can't can't remember. It had to do with the Matrix 12, and what they were saying was that back in the day, when instruments like that were being developed, there was this notion that they were somewhat disposable, and that people would, get the next year's model. Who knew that the entire cavalcade of all of those synthesizers, from brand new ones to ones that go all the way back, are still loved and cherished by synthesists all over the world? Isn't it crazy?
Yeah, it wasn't that we thought they'd be disposable, but we just never thought what would be happening in 10 years. Like if you had asked me when I did the Prophet 5, will anybody be using this for 10 or 15 years? I probably would have laughed. I said, nah, nobody. There'll be something else. But so it wasn't like we planned for that to happen, but it is kind of fun to see, because we went through the period that I call the digital dark ages.
Oh, I was there, I remember.
Yeah. So for 20 years, instruments and sound lost personality, I think. And then there was the rediscovery period, first with the older instrument, but that was also simultaneous with, like, when I started with the Evolver, that was in 2002,
right,
which was the same year that Bob Moog came back with the Mini Moog Voyager.
Right.
And I point to that year as kind of the start of the resurgence,
the beginning of all of this
analog,
stuff.
because now there were new things. At the same time, people were just starting to rediscover the old stuff, and then in that 15, 17 years since then, it's just getting out of control.
With this, go on, I'm sorry.
Well, it's just because everybody's realizing the obvious. You play this stuff and it's fun. Each of those old instruments, I mean, even the ones that we didn't like back then, we say, oh, that sounds kind of thin, compared to this one. It's not as good as a Prophet 5.
Sure.
But now people, all of us are realizing, well, it's not that it didn't sound as good, it sounded different. It has its own personality, and people can take that for what it is.
Right.
So
the whole overall topology. So speaking of old synthesizers, so I've had a beloved Pro 1 forever, easily 20 years, maybe 25 years, and it has been sitting for a while, mostly because the keyboard has got that lateral sort of clacking kind of thing.
Yeah, the keyboards are flaky in Pro 1s.
So I found out that there is a guy in Sweden who is getting FITAR keyboards that are exactly the right size, and then selling them so you can retrofit your Pro 1 with a really clean, brand new FITAR keyboard.
That would be awesome.
So I'll
highly suggested.
Yeah, I'll let you know how it works out. The other thing I'm going to do at the same time is replace all the tantalum caps with electrolytics instead. So that it hopefully has a whole lot of life going on down the road with it.
Sure.
And clean it up, and then I'll have a beautiful new old Pro 1 waiting there. One question before we finish up. I am the lucky owner of one of your Eurorack filters.
Okay.
Do you guys have any plans to do any more work in the realm of modular synths right now?
Not really. We're a small company, and with limited resources, it takes almost as much work to put one of those into production, to do it right, than it does to do a full instrument.
Right.
So we'd rather do full instruments. And I don't want to, I suppose we could start a new part of the company, a modular division or something, but that sounds like too much work.
Well, that makes sense. Do one thing really, really beautifully, or do several things really, really beautifully, and make that your shining star. I appreciate it. Well, Dave Smith, thank you so much. I hope that you have a wonderful NAMM.
Okay,
and
thanks, Nick.
As always, it's a wonderful pleasure to talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.